The Lost Generation. So romantic, so exciting. Paris in the 1920s. Today, I would like to speak about something that's very special for me. That Summer in Paris by Morley Callaghan. Morley Callaghan was a writer from Toronto. He was studying law and somehow got into journalism, and he was working as a reporter for the Toronto Star, which, for you Hemingway fans, was the same newspaper that Ernest Hemingway was working on for a brief period. Morley Callaghan knew about Hemingway, and he knew about his reputation, and Hemingway, I think, had just published his first thing. I forget, it's something like 8 poems and 2 stories. I forget what it is, but it seemed that he was on his way. Hemingway and his wife went off to Paris. They kept up a correspondence. Hemingway introduced Callaghan to his publisher at Scribner, helped Callaghan get his first work published. So there was mutual respect and friendship there. Morley Callaghan and his wife, they went off to Paris for a summer. Boy, did they have adventures with all of the big names. This memoir is mostly about the relationship between Morley Callaghan and Ernest Hemingway. Now, we all know Hemingway, but Callaghan too was making his way. He had short stories published in the big journals of the time. I think the Atlantic Monthly was the big one. And so he went to Paris and he met the Fitzgeralds, he met James Joyce and his wife. He was right in there. But when he got to Paris, he found that Hemingway he was building up that Hemingway persona. He was becoming that man who I think we're all familiar with. Ernest Hemingway.
Morley Callaghan.
One of the first impressions he has is that they're sitting in a cafe. Ernest is drinking the beer really fast, and he keeps asking Callaghan, are you ready for another? Are you ready? And Callaghan really gets the feeling that it's not about enjoying beer together. It's more of a challenge, like, oh, look, I can drink more beer than you. And that really sets the tone of the novel. So the Callaghans are invited over to the Hemingways. Ernest says, in one of your stories, you wrote about boxing. Do you box?
You box? No.
Callaghan said, yes, he boxed quite a bit. He boxed throughout his life. And so Ernest goes out and he comes back and he's got these boxing gloves and he wants Callaghan to put them on. Like, okay, I want to show me you could box. The women are a bit, come on now, this is not a training center, this is the living room. And you big idiots are going to smash up the furniture if you start boxing. But Hemingway insists, as he often will. Callaghan puts on the gloves and they square off. Now, they don't exchange any punches at this point, but Hemingway wants to see if Callaghan knows what he's talking about or if he's just a poser. He says, oh yes, I can see you box. No one around here boxes, come with me and we'll go to the club tomorrow and because I haven't had any good boxing for a long time. So Callaghan is very intimidated because he first of all, Ernest Hemingway is much larger than him. And in boxing, that is a ridiculous advantage. I mean, you don't have big guys fighting the medium-sized guys. And he also feels this tension with Hemingway that there's always this strong aspect of competition, whether it's drinking beer or about the writing and the short stories. So now he feels that Ernest Hemingway wants to teach him a lesson, perhaps. Callaghan is quite trepidatious and he's boxing very cautiously and he ends up really in a defensive position. And then when they take a break in between the rounds, Callaghan comes to the realization that Hemingway has studied boxing and he's interviewed the boxers and he's hung around the gyms talking with the trainers. But he realizes that actually Morley Callaghan has done a lot more boxing. He's just been in the gym and he's trained more. And this allows him to loosen up. Let's not say that he beats him up, but there's this thing in the book where he can tag Hemingway at will, and he cuts his lip, which at first Hemingway has his begrudging respect for this, that Callaghan tags him every time. Eventually things go a bit badly. I don't want to give you too much because that's not something I like to do. And it's made more complicated because F. Scott Fitzgerald seems that he's jealous of this Callaghan-Hemingway relationship, and he wants to go to the boxing club, but Hemingway doesn't want to take him because, that's not his scene. Fitzgerald's the dancing nightclub drinking man. He's not the boxing club man. He tries to keep Scott Fitzgerald out of the gym, but eventually these 3 writers of a generation are in this little boxing club together, and something happens. I won't tell you. You have to read the book. Stories. There's a lot of these stories being retold. Now, there's a really good one with Scott Fitzgerald where Callaghan and his wife, they go over to the Fitzgeralds. They knock on the door. Scott and his wife Zelda are both drunk, and it's quite evident that they forgot that they had invited these people over to their home. Scott Fitzgerald has a manuscript of Hemingway's, and he's been going through it, and he shows it to Callaghan, say, oh, what do you think about this? And Morley at Callaghan isn't instantly taken with it. He says, oh, well, it's okay, but it doesn't impress me too much. It seems very simplistic. And Scott Fitzgerald takes offense at this, like, who are you to criticize Hemingway? Like, Scott Fitzgerald does something really, to me it's quite ridiculous, but Morley Callaghan gets supremely offended. So Fitzgerald, as drunk as he is, says, oh, this short story by Hemingway doesn't impress you, Callaghan. Oh, what would impress you? What can we do to impress Morley Callaghan? And he's really drunk and antagonizing him. And so Scott Fitzgerald stands on his head, I suppose, leaning against a wall, stands on his head and said, does this impress you, Callaghan? Is this impressive for you? Sarcastic and patronizing, which Callaghan really gets offended by this, and it takes some time to patch things up with the Fitzgeralds after that. It's a memoir. It's not fiction. It is, I think Morley Callaghan wrote this novel when he was in his 60s, and he was, looking back on his life, remembering that summer in Paris with greatest writers of that generation, that he was there, and he was one of them. I don't think Callaghan qualifies as one of the lost generation, which is a shame. It would have been nice to get a Canadian in there, but I think he was only there for the summer. I haven't told you everything that's in this book. There's a lot more. Like, if you're a fan of Hemingway and you think Hemingway is this mythical figure, this is quite a great book to read because it shows that he wasn't. He was boastful, he was proud, he was competitive in a petty way, and he did not like to lose in boxing. The principal event of the novel is sort of the culmination of these two men boxing for several weeks. Callaghan just consistently splitting Hemingway's lip, and eventually Ernest, with Fitzgerald on the side. Okay, I can't tell you more than that, all right? Really. Even in Hemingway's day, people like to romanticize him and tell stories about him. At one point, someone says something to Callaghan about, Hemingway's boxing. And Callaghan says, well, Ernest Hemingway's a writer. He's not a boxer. Like, how do you imagine that he's some kind of a Superman? Like, he's not. He's drinking and smoking and sitting at a typewriter for hours a day. Like, he's not a world champion boxer.
I never belonged to his clan because I made fun of him. And nobody ever made fun of Hemingway. Yeah. But I did. And he took it, but he didn't like me to do it in front of the club. We met in a projection of a movie which he had made and which he wanted me to narrate. And he had written the commentary. This is many years ago. Yeah. And we hadn't seen each other. This is a dark projection room, and I was reading the text. And I said, is it really necessary to say this? Do you think wouldn't it be better to just see the picture? And things like that. And then I heard this growl from the darkness, Some damn faggot who runs an art theater trying to tell me how to write narration and so on. So I began to camp it up. I thought, if that's what I'm dealing with, I said, oh, Mr. Hemingway, you think because you're so big and strong and have hair on your chest that you got to bully me, you see? So this great figure stood up and swung at me. So I swung at him. Now you have the picture of the Spanish Civil War being projected on a screen, and these two heavy figures swinging away at each other and missing most of the time.
So I have a little bit of a question for you, for, you five souls who are watching the video to the end. Today's video is a bit of a shambles. Today I have a reason for it. I read a book that I was sure I was going to make a review of. Like, I was planning that book for this week, and I was really excited and ready. The reason I was excited was because it was a reread. It was something I read in 1997. I loved it. And for the last 25 years, I would recommend this book to people. Lately, I sort of thought, well, that was a very long time ago. Perhaps I should reread it before I recommend it to anyone. But I was pretty sure that it was a great book. And I read it, and it was awful. So bad. So then I was really stuck. Like, okay, it's Valentine's Day. I've got to get the video ready tomorrow. What am I going to do? So I've got this half-assed review of That Summer in Paris, which is a great book, but I could really do a better review if I had the time to think about it a bit more. And I would like to know, because today I had to make the decision, That Summer in Paris or The Bad Book. And I thought, well, why would I review a bad book? I mean, isn't that quite a waste of time? Like, because what did we get out of it? I'm telling you, it's not worth reading. Is that interesting to watch? Or should I just save that for the end of the year most disappointing novels of 2022? Or would you like to? Or would you occasionally, when I'm very disappointed in a very angry kind of a way, do you want to see that video? If you want to see a negative review every once in a while, leave a comment down below. Or if you would rather I just recommended good books, and then that way you get something from the video, right? Like you say, okay, there's another book for the list. If you're interested, my university studies are still quite a challenge, but next week I have a reading week. So hopefully I'm going to make a good video. But I'm reading a massive novel right now, 700 pages, and I don't know if I'm going to be able to get that finished. So who knows what it's going to be next week? I never know. I'm not a very organized person. If I've made the video with the ring light turned on, then I feel that is some measure of success. All right. Thank you for watching. Grant loves books. Grant.